Hello, middling modeler here. I recently completed a build of this kit. And I wanted to share some of my builder's notes and experiences on building this kit and kind of give you guys a heads up on a few things that you might run into should you choose to build the Dingo. Okay, I won't do that accent again for the rest of the video, I promise. Let's get into it. Okay guys, the first thing to note is that the kit comes on 2 sprues and these 2 figures are included with the kit. And I have to say that every year the Tamiya kit figures, they seem to be getting better every year. So the newer the kit, the better the figure it seems to be. Speaking of figures, let's start with that. I think it's in step 2. It suggests that you build and place the driver. I would recommend that you actually hold off on placing the figures until the very end. But when it comes to the figures, you can generally just follow the sculpt during assembly and just glue them up based on what the sculpt kind of directs you to do. That seems to work pretty well. That's what I did, and I didn't really have any issues. The one small caveat to that is the driver's hands. The only thing I did there was I made sure to use the steering wheel in his hands to make sure that the spacing on the hands was correct. So I would recommend that you do that when you're assembling the driver. But don't bother placing the figures or the steering wheel until the very end. So basically just before you glue on the mirror, that's when you want to place these figures. As far as placing the driver goes, the technique that I used was to just drop the driver into place, put the steering wheel into his hands, and then with a pair of tweezers I very gently lifted the center part of the steering wheel over the steering column and just popped it into place, and then that pressure fit held it into place very well. I didn't need to glue it down or anything like that. I mean, it's solidly into place. I did end up gluing the commander into place, and that took a little bit of finagling to get him to fit in there, but he did eventually make it in there. If we move on to the exterior of the kit, the first thing I want to talk about, because I think it's in the next step after they talk about placing the driver, is you're going to be putting on the fenders and this piece right here. I think it's a vehicle jack, but I don't know enough about these vehicles to actually say if that's true. So I think that is a vehicle jack. Doesn't matter. What matters is don't install it until after you have placed the decals, because you'll run into the problem that I did, and that is this decal is actually in slightly the incorrect place because I couldn't get it past the edge of this this little tool here. While we're looking on this side, this storage container right here, when you go to install the fenders, don't glue these fenders up until the next step when you attach the chassis and the storage container, because you want to make sure that this storage container goes from end to end on these fenders and you get a nice flush fit. When I originally put the fenders on, I ended up with a little bit of a gap here because I glued them on first and then put that on. So now it wasn't very long, so I was able to save that, but you will want to be aware of that little gotcha. So let's move around to the front and let's talk about something else right there. So this front, whatever it is, I think it's a piece of armor, but I honestly have no idea. My knowledge of these vehicles is quite limited. But don't put this on. This is obvious, but don't put this on until after you've placed these 2 decals. I think you could probably place those decals there with this piece of armor easily enough, but I would save yourself the headache and place those decals first. Oh, and yeah, while we're talking about the front, the mirror. This is painfully obvious to anyone who has built a model, and I knew the second I did it that I had made a mistake, but don't attach the model until the very, very end. So do all your painting, do all your weathering, get the figures in place, everything else before you put that mirror on there, or you will snap it off. And yes, I totally made that rookie mistake and snapped it off like 4 times. I think that's just about it. The only other note that I have is about these antennas. There are no plastic antennas or anything like that in the kit itself. So if you want antennas attached, you're going to have to do that yourself. I just made mine out of some fly tying wire that I picked up, and that seemed to work really well. But I think that's it for my tips. I mean, you can see it's a tiny little 1/48 scale kit, and it's a surprisingly good kit. Lots of really nice little details considering the scale. I had absolutely no interest in this vehicle. The only reason I picked up this kit was because we have a club contest coming up where we're doing a theme based on kits that are named after animals. So I grabbed this, and now after having built this one, I kind of want to build another one in a bigger scale. I would like to get a hold of one of these in 1/35 and build that up and see how that goes. And if I do that, I'll make sure to make a little video about it. So anyway, those are my builder's notes. Oh, and while we're talking about that, I did build a little base for it. And this is just a little, the base is actually made from a candle lid, from a little woodwick candle lid, and then I rolled out some air dry clay and used a cobblestone roller to make that pattern. This is some of the Tamiya plastic brick walls. I 3D printed out this little label, and the rest is just, some grass tufts, some chopped up pieces of dried leaves, and I don't know what this is. I got it from the florist department in Hobby Lobby, but it's some kind of algae or something, but it worked really well for that, so I put it there. But I thought that made a neat little base, and was kind of cool, and dressed it up a little bit. Well, there you have it, guys. That's my build and my notes on building up Tamiya's 1/48 scale British Armored Scout Car Mark II, the Dingo. No accent this time. I hope you guys found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you next time.